Good afternoon, everyone. Great coming on here right after lunch. And what I'd like to do is just have everybody stand up and just stretch, take a couple of deep breaths, and we'll get into it. Although I'm very passionate about the Monroe Institute, and I'm excited to talk about it, I really don't want to put you all to sleep. Whoever's sitting down, are you already asleep? Hey, I'd like to start by thanking the Woodenfish Institute and Dr. Hubbard for this invitation and the opportunity to talk about the Monroe Institute. And Hemi-Sync is something I'm very passionate about. I first went to a program at the Monroe Institute in 1997. At that time, I'd been practicing meditation for about 17 years, and I could see the difference that it made in my practice. Before I get into it, I want to tell you that what I put together is a lot more than what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to touch on all the slides, the subjects, but the reason I put it together the way I did is because I want to give you the opportunity to download it off the website, the Woodenfish website, where it'll be available, or as a PDF file, or you can email me and I'll send it to you, because there's a lot of good information in there, and of course I only have 20 minutes. There we go. The Monroe Institute. Oh, sit, please. Well, I guess I'll just see how long it takes everybody to settle in your seats. This is an aerial shot of the Monroe Institute as it is today. It was formed in 1985 as a nonprofit organization for the exploration of consciousness and levels of awareness. At the time, in 1985, they had one program. It was called the Gateway Experience, and they had Hemi-Sync. To your left is the retreat center, which it's the primary retreat center. In the middle are the offices and conference room, and to your right is the lab, the research lab. What I'm going to touch on in my talk is a little bit about the Monroe Institute, the organization, and discuss Hemi-Sync and what Hemi-Sync is all about. It's not just the binaural beats, and how it affects the brain waves, and also correlates to focus levels or levels of consciousness. And then those levels of consciousness are incorporated into the programs that we offer, the meditation retreats at the Monroe Institute. From there, I have a brief demo on what the binaural beats sound like, and then an EEG feed out on what how Hemi-Sync affects the brain, and how it synchronizes the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And there's a new technology we're working on at the Monroe Institute right now called spatial angle modulation. I'm going to discuss that briefly, and then talk about one of the significant things we do in the lab. It's called the personal resources export, and then talk a little bit about where the Monroe Institute has a presence in the world. Okay, the Monroe Institute has over 300 acres in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in western Virginia, outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. The executive director is Nancy Scooter McMonigal, who is the wife of Joe McMonigal, one of the premier remote viewers in the remote viewing program that the U.S. Army had going in the 60s, or 70s and 80s. It's divided into three divisions. The education division, under which they have they offer the programs, the 6-day residential programs. We also have Outreach, which is a 2-day excursion offered just about all over the world by individuals. We also have an online program, and we currently have 5 offerings online where people can sign up and do a program online. Plus, what they call a local chapter network is where people who have an affiliation with the Monroe Institute can either work out of their home or a local organization and get together periodically to do a couple of Hemi-Sync exercises. There's also the Dolphin Energy Club, which is a distance healing group that uses Hemi-Sync for healing applications based on the direction of a deck coordinator. Now a little bit about Hemi-Sync. There's a lot of binaural beat products out there. I think Hemi-Sync is probably the one it's the oldest for sure, that's been out there for meditation purposes. And it's also the one that's got the most extensive research behind it. Bob Monroe spent probably upwards of about 13 years working with explorers to come together and, based on their experiences, took the Hemi-Sync and coordinated all the responses and got them into a consensus on the type of experiences they had, and translated these into focus levels, which I'll discuss in a little bit. Basically, the way that Hemi-Sync works, to your right is a brain pattern person at normal beta, awake and alert. And the second one with the headphones is what the brain looks like when you're playing Hemi-Sync. And the reason the headphones, when we have the programs or when you use Hemi-Sync, we highly recommend that you use headphones to get the maximum effect of the stereo. The brainwave patterns involved, like I said earlier, there are a few things that I'm not going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about with Hemi-Sync is basically how it's applied for meditation. There's a number of purposes for Hemi-Sync, and the technology is used from anywhere from heavy beta to awake and alert to delta to deep sleep to help people sleep at night. And the way that it was set up for the meditation was to come up with focus levels. And these focus levels are equivalent to levels of consciousness. Focus level 10 being mind awake, body asleep. Focus level 12 is a state of expanded awareness. 15 is where you have the ability to transcend time, and so on and so on. I have up to focus levels 34 and 35, but it goes well beyond that. When the Monroe Institute offers programs, they're basically, the theme is around the different focus levels. The Gateway program, which is the entry-level program, has you spend at least one day at each of these 4 focus levels, 10, 12, 15, and 21. Just to give you an example of a couple like Heartline, which is focus level 18. Focus level 18 is a very heart-centered level of consciousness. So you spend just about a week at that level exploring the heart and unconditional love. There's another interesting one is Timeline, the focus level 15, where you transcend time. And during Timeline, you have the opportunity to look into your past lives, future lives. You can access any time frame, any time period, because of course time is an illusion. Okay, now I'm going to have this binaural beat demo, show you how the binaural beats work. Frequency going in each ear. that you can hear how they resonate. Put a little neutral sound in there to kind of, when you're listening to the actual meditation tapes, you don't really hear any of those sounds. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like on an EEG feed out.
Listen now to these Hemi-Sync sounds and watch as the brain waves change.
How the right and left side are getting coordinated, synchronized. And you see the difference between the Hemi-Sync state on the left and the initial state on the right. Spatial angle modulation, which was first discovered at the Monroe Institute about 3-4 years ago, is a technology that uses digital sound and an arc that where you perceive the music in front of you, and they can move it around, and they use that sound and other sounds that help also get you into an altered state of awareness, and which is different from the focus levels. And we're still working on the possibilities with spatial angle modulation, or SAM as we call it. There are currently 3 programs, 2 of which I've experienced, Conscious Presence and Journeys, A Voyage to Happiness, which are very great programs, and then there's another one called Event Horizon. Now the PrEP program, I've just described briefly. This is once somebody has been to a program at the Monroe Institute, you have the opportunity to explore on your own in the lab, or you work with a trainer in a 2-hour session, and you can set a intention for what you want to do. In my case, I just did one a couple of years ago. I'm an energy healer, and I wanted to get more insight into healing, and at all the different focus levels which I controlled, and it gave me an insight into the work I was doing, and by the time I was done, I had an insight into the human energy field, and an ability to tell what a person is capable of vibrating at, what they're vibrating at, and what is in their energy field that's causing their vibration to be reduced. So I incorporated that into my practice. It's very helpful. Currently, in addition to the campus at the Monroe Institute, there's been a big effort in the past, I'd say probably about 5 to 10 years, to get it out into several countries. And right now we've got it in Europe, Asia, and North and South America, and one in Africa. These are at least a gateway program. In some places we have more programs than that. There's 2 in Asia, one in Tokyo, and the other in Calcutta, India. These are ways that Hemi-Sync and SAM can enhance your practice in conjunction with a program at the Monroe Institute. We teach, during a program, we teach you tools that you can use for personal self-awareness and personal growth. We also teach you how to go into different states of consciousness at will, and get into states of higher awareness, and through what they call memory encoding. So at any time you needed to access a higher level of consciousness to make a better decision for something, you can access that by what they call memory encoding. There's also brainwave entrainment to help you get much more easier into these states of consciousness. And finally, how your perceptions are heightened during the experience. I think that was probably the one thing that I noticed after 17 years of meditation, that how sharp my experiences were, how sharp the visions that I was getting, and how it improved my meditation experience. Just briefly, this is the mission and vision of the Monroe Institute. And finally, Bob Monroe, who's the founder, and one of his famous quotes, "The greatest illusion is that mankind has limitations." I think the one big thing I'll just mention before I go is as a nonprofit, the Monroe Institute has no affiliation with any religions or any belief systems. In fact, the only belief that we encourage people to have when they do come to a program is to be open to the idea that you're more than your physical body. Thank you.